Okay, folks, just testing something there, making sure of something. But with movies lately and everything, throughout the history of movies, television shows, you name it, sometimes we've always thought to ourselves, what if this was played out on the screens? How would people react? What if we decided to do this? How would people react? What would their thoughts be? Well, quite frankly, sometimes the thoughts of the moviegoer or the television viewer or even the reader of a comic book or whatever, sometimes when they see something happen, the first thing that will go through their minds when they see something happen that, well, is pretty much, to quote what the nostalgia critic sometimes says, or uses as an example in his reviews, and God forgive me for saying this, Lord forgive me for saying this, but most of the time what goes through a person's mind is a major mindfuck. And the reason that major mindfuck goes through a person's mind is because they start having that WTF moment when they see these things. And the WTF being, excuse my language again, Lord, and I apologize for this, what the fuck, basically that's what WTF stands for, what the fuck, because basically that's the question that comes to their minds of, what the fuck did I just see, and did this movie just play a mindfuck on me, or did this show just play a mindfuck on me, or did this book that I'm reading, or this comic, did they play a mindfuck on me, because what the fuck did I see? And again, this is something that has been going on since the advent of cinema, including animation shorts and stuff. But, with that said, it's one of those situations where you think to yourself, or you ask yourself, what were those people on? Were they tripping? What were they on? Did they, just checking something. But, you ask yourself, what were those people thinking? Were they on some kind of acid trip? What were they smoking? What was going through their minds at the thought of the process? Because, like I said, throughout the history of cinema and television and even comics and novels and all that, people always ask that question of what were people thinking? And it goes back all the way, like I said, to the beginning of cinema and even to the advent of those little feature shorts, serials, if you will, and in the case of animation through Warner Brothers, MGM, and Disney, sometimes once in a while you would get these kind of things that you wouldn't expect. I can recall, honestly, from my own personal experience, and you can actually see a clip of it here on YouTube under WTF. I can recall watching the Donald Duck cartoon from the 1940s when it aired on Disney Channel for the first time as a kid. I remember watching Duck Pimples. And the one scene that stuck in my mind throughout that film, or throughout watching that short, was not only was it a mindfuck in a sense, even for a young kid, and probably even for those back in the 1940s that saw it in the theaters, but for me, it was a mindfuck because there was one scene in there that totally was a WTF what the fuck moment. And that moment was when the female in that short, I can't think of her name right now, they gave her a name, and I can't think of it right now. But the female in that short, as some people call it, the pre-Jessica Rabbit-like character in Duck Pimples, the WTF moment happened when she's looking for her pearls. She thinks she spots them in the back pocket of a detective or an inspector that's supposedly helping with the case. And instead of not finding them, she finds handcuffs. Instead of finding her pearls, she finds handcuffs. But basically, the WTF moment, trying to get to what I'm trying to say here, happens right afterwards when she basically says, basically says, "Oh bother," and then climbs up and under the freaking trench coat of the inspector/detective, and then just lays there. I mean, basically, you see these two big old lumps, one representing her head, one representing her backside, and then they just settle into two small lumps, and then goes flat, and then that goes flat as if now she's just suddenly merged with the guy and become part of his body. And that leads to a big mind fuck, a big WTF, which I entitled the clip as here on my channel. Because then all of a sudden you see her hand stick out. She's doing like a little magic trick, like pull the rabbit out of the hat with the inspector's hat, puts the hat back down, and then when the guy's calling for one of his assistants, you see her hand come out like this and kind of be like as you're shouting, going like, "Hey," you know that, right? Her arm comes out with her hand, and her hand goes like this in front of at the side of his mouth, while he's doing this, acting like a third hand. And then, when he's reading the business card of his assistant, she basically is scratching his chin, while the other hand is putting on the glasses, acting like two extra pairs of hands. And it's like, what the fuck? It's like, what were these guys thinking? Were they on some kind of acid trip at the time? Even though acid trips really didn't become something of the norm until about the 60s and 70s. What were they thinking? Because honestly, even in cartoon shorts back then and now, if something like that happens to a character, the character more along the lines will notice and do something. It's like, what were they thinking to have the character, who turns out to be the villain, by the way, the thief, if you will, what were they thinking of not having the guy know that he had an extra pair of hands, and oh, by the way, those extra arms and hands were females. I mean, he's looking for the lady thinking she's kidnapped, and yet they don't put in the fact, they don't add into the story that, oh, by the way, the female's on your freaking back. And again, she acts like an additional pair of arms and hands, like she's merged with the guy. Like she got absorbed into the guy's body or something. Even though she pops her head up immediately after he reads the card. It's like, pops her head up out of the back of his trench coat, like after he reads the card, and after Donald drops these hot irons back into the book. I mean, it's like, honestly, what the heck? And again, these are one of these moments that make you think, why? What were they thinking? What were they thinking that come up with these WTF moments, these mind fucks? What were they thinking? And then if you think that's something, how about the lustful milk gag? I've talked about this on camera, and I've talked about it through text on DeviantArt and other places. But again, what were they thinking coming up with this? I mean, I understand through animation you want to have a visual representation of something that in real life can never really happen on camera. So through animation, you are provided with that opportunity to visually see what that character is feeling or what that character feels like in animation form. So it helps out. But again, what were they thinking when back in the 1940s, if not earlier than that, they come up with the lustful milk egg of having a female character freaking melt into a puddle? Swooner Crooner is the earliest exception that I know of. And true, we've seen various examples elsewhere. And if anybody that wants to know what the lustful milk egg means in reality, even those that run TV tropes, the lustful milk egg basically is when a character, male or female, melts into a complete puddle. Not just halfway through or part of their body flattens out and looks like they're melting. No, they melt into a complete freaking puddle. And no, not somebody going on top of other people acting out a freaking orgy or anything like that. No. Or even doing a variant because they see some kind of collectible figure they want. No, none of that. It's basically when a female or male character gets amored or attracted to another character of the same gender, that it causes them to melt into a puddle. And basically, animation allows that to happen from a visual standpoint. But again, it's like, what were they thinking when they came up with that gag? What was the person thinking at the time? Like, okay, we got this Frank Sinatra-like character, because a lot of characterizations of famous singers and actors and actresses back then were the norm. So you had this Frank Sinatra-like rooster, and all of a sudden one of the hens melts into a puddle, and all you see is like a little mohawk or whatever it's thing, a little quills, little red quills sticking up, and that's it. And she's nothing, and all she is now is nothing more than a shaky black puddle, black melted puddle, like rippling and all that. And it's like, what were they thinking when they came up with that? And again, like I said, we've seen that probably in earlier examples and later examples. Heck, I'll give you another later example. Popeye. Now, I'm not counting Fistic Mystic because of the fact that when Olive melted, she didn't melt. She just turned yellow and did the get run over by a piano deal going down the stairs. That's what she did. The pancake kind of deal. The one I'm talking about is Paula Vu Woo's. And again, just like with Duck Pimples, when I saw that, not only did it make me a fan of the gag, and it did, but when I saw that, I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, these characters are supposed to be human, yet visually, because when you think back on it, and even as a kid you think this, you think, well, these characters are portrayed as humans in this cartoon, but visually I just saw the main love interest, who many have dubbed probably is the more attractive, probably the more prettiest, if not Disney-like in a sense, rendition of Olive, and I know that sounds crazy to say, of Olive Oyl in any Popeye short, period. All of a sudden we see her melt into a puddle of pool of melted butter that's flowing, running down the floor, and all you see is her eyes and a smile. That's it. All you see is her eyes and a smile. And as she's flowing down the floor, later on, if you watch it as you get older, you notice that there's little dry spots coming up around her, and you're thinking, that's how they're ending it? What the fuck were they thinking? Why end it like that? You could have had that done in the middle of the freaking cartoon when Bluto kissed her, and it would have made more sense. You could have had Popeye come in, scoop her up, dump her back out, and there you go. It's like, what were they thinking? What were they thinking, right? I mean, I understand some of the Popeye shorts, even back when Fleischer Studios did it, okay? Max Fleischer and all of them did it. Yeah, some of them were WTF moments as well. And when Paramount and King Features got a hold of it, that was continued on, but in more toony style. But still, it's like, you look at that, you look at Suna Crooner, you look at all these moments that I've talked about, and you think, what in the world were these people thinking? I mean, even The Simpsons, for as long as they've been on the air, have had the WTF moments. They have. They've had the WTF moments. Let's not deny that. Even Futurama's had them. Family's Guys have them. They've all had those mindfuck WTF moments where you think, what were these people thinking? What were they smoking? And there have even been features, live action and mostly animation throughout the 60s and 70s where you've had these kind of moments, where you've had these WTF mindfuck moments with movies. Ralph Bakshi is probably one of the biggest examples of this with movies like American Pop, Cookskin, what is the other one? Hey, Good Looking, even Fritz the Cat. But mostly the first thing I talked about are probably one of the biggest, probably some of the biggest WTF mindfuck movies you could think of. And even some people will put Richard Williams, Stephen the Cobbler at times with a, recobbled cut, which everybody suggests you watch, and even I do, as well as even the Miramax version, people sometimes look at that and they think, what the fuck were they thinking with some of these scenes? Even when Richard Williams did Raggedy Ann and Andy and did their movie, it's like, what was this guy tripping on? What were they thinking? You know, there's been so many various moments like that. You know, like I said, even in animation, through television series, animated television series, you think that. You know, back in the 80s, I can recall several times, I've seen several episodes of shows that I grew up on, and I know some people will agree on that, even though they were one-shot deals, a part of a continuity or whatever, you had situations happen to the characters that made you think that even if it was a one-shot, a part of the continuity, and it was just for that episode, it made you think, and looking back on it, it made you think, what were the writers thinking? You know, what the fuck were they on? Why did they give us this kind of a mind fuck of an episode? It didn't make any sense. It really didn't. You know, it's all those kind of situations when you think about it. It's like, what were people thinking? Why would they come up with things like this? It's like it didn't make any sense. Again, like even if it was for one short or for one shot deal, it had nothing to do with the continuity, or if it was for just that one episode, and whatever happened to said characters got restored, and it was part of the continuity, and it was referenced probably later on in an episode or two. It's like, what were they thinking? Why would they come up with this kind of stuff? Those kind of situations. Heck, even with Cartoon Network, you had shows that they did. Like Powerpuff Girls have had these kind of situations. Dexter's Laboratory has had it. I remember there were several shorts. Two in particular, where Dee Dee, and I actually have these episodes on DVD, courtesy of a friend at iOffer, because I wanted to see, because these things make great conversation pieces, in a sense, because you wonder what the writers were thinking when they came up with this. Okay, you have one episode where Dee Dee merges, thanks to one of Dexter's inventions, merges with the car, and basically, she gets restored to normal by being farted out of the exhaust pipe at the back of the car. Basically, her car form that she merges and becomes with the car farts her out of the exhaust pipe in the back of the car. But yet, the car is still in the shape and it still has the color and look of Dee Dee on it. Still has a facial feature probably on the front, and you're thinking, what were they thinking coming up with that episode? If you're going to restore Dee Dee, what were you thinking leaving the car the same freaking color as she is, and kind of hinting at the folks that something doesn't seem right. Why is the radio on the girly station, and why does the car freaking look like Dee Dee? It's like, what were they thinking? And then Dee Dee's tail. Dee Dee's tail is another one. It's like, what were they thinking with this one? Because just like with the car one, she got turned into something other than human. Now, the car one, she got restored because, like I said, she got farted out of the freaking exhaust pipe in the back of the car. Here, she goes through a freaking phase where she wants to become like one of the My Little Pony knockoffs that they were parodying in the show. Or whatever they were called, Pony Princesses, or whatever they were, Pony Princesses or something. She wants to be like them. So Dexter, seeing the potential of not only could he study about horses and how they work, he grants her wish. He has a freaking machine, actually, that allows this to happen. He grants her wish. She gets turned into a pink horse, which a lot of people pretty much, if you're furry or not, felt is the more attractive look for Dee Dee, because she looks more beautiful and attractive this way. I don't know. But overall, at the end of this, she doesn't get freaking restored. No, at the end of Dee Dee's tale, she gets to run off and be free like a regular pony, a princess pony, My Little Pony knockoff character. And you think to yourself, what were they thinking? Continuity-wise, you would think the parents would wonder, where's Dee Dee? Where did she go? What happened to our daughter? I mean, continuity-wise, you think the parents would wonder that, to the point that Dexter would be like, follow me, see that horse over there? That pink horse? That's her. I mean, you think honestly they would come up with a concept like that, maybe a follow-up episode. But no, it's just like, end it there. And that's what I'm talking about, these shows having episodes short sometimes that are one-shot deals, because then that has nothing to do with the continuity later on. It doesn't. It doesn't. Again, it makes you think, what the fuck were they thinking? Coming up with this mind fuck of an idea. It makes you think that. It makes you think that. And again, sometimes these are one-shot deals. And why are they one-shot deals? Because sometimes it's just something that the writer has to get out of the system. And then they just go on and do the rest of the continuity. Sometimes the writer, whether it's a live-action show or an animated show, sometimes they will put a warning in front of the television before the episode saying this has nothing to do with the current continuity or storyline you're seeing. This is a one-shot deal. Sometimes they will do that. But most of the time it is a one-shot deal and they don't say anything. Because then you look back at episodes that come on later on and you wonder, why are they mentioning what happens to so-and-so? I'll tell you why. Because of the fact that it never happened. It was a one-shot deal. Want the biggest example? And I talked about this. I'm surprised Linkara hasn't talked about this. I'm surprised nobody's talked about this that much. There are several others, but not many people have talked about it, except on the special features of the DVD set, where even the crew and the actors and actresses pretty much regret doing this episode. Basically, I think it's an episode of Star Trek Voyager, or Deep Space Nine, one of them. And basically, one of the main characters wants to try to attempt Warp 10, which, oh, by the way, was already established in previous incarnations that Warp 10 can be done. Pretty much, because of this, gets side-affected and mutated into almost a lizard-like character that, for some odd reason, is backwards evolving into a salamander-like creature. So what happens? Because of this, at the end, he kidnaps the captain, one of the more popular Star Trek captains, and probably I think the only major female Star Trek captain. What's he do? He kidnaps her, does a Warp 10 with her, the same thing happens to her, they end up landing on a planet where they're found by the rest of the crew, but they're found, in 3 days, and oh, by the way, within 3 days, not only does the character that's affected go full salamander, backwards evolve into full salamander, but so does the captain. And oh, by the way, within 3 days, because of that, not only do they go full salamander, they mate and they have kids. And that is one of those WTF mindfuck moments that not only is a one-shot deal, but is so WTF and mindfuckery that even the cast and crew look at it the same way. Because even they wonder what the fuck they were thinking when they come up with that episode. And it's so bad. It's so much of a WTF mindfuck episode in a one-shot deal that it's discontinued from continuity. It's basically a one-shot deal. It's, like I said, it's one of those one-shot deals. Originally, obviously, it was intended to be part of the continuity, but because it was so messed up, they basically said, screw it, we're going to discount it or discontinue it from continuity. Yes, it'll be part of the DVD set, but it's only a one-shot deal. We'll just say it was a mistake that we made, and it was just something we had to get out of our system. Because that's mainly what a lot of these WTF mindfuck situations, episodes in live action or animation, or even in movies, live action animation, that people do. They do it because they got to get it out of the system. There's one guy, I can't think of his name right now, who has done some metamorphosis like kind of animation. And he has a couple of movies to his name. One of them is, I think it's called High School Hair or something like that. And basically you have the two main protagonists, the love interest, the boyfriend and girlfriend. Not only do they get ran off the road, killed, and seemingly die together with the car at the bottom of the ocean, but 1 year later, they're sitting there still as now skeletons, a spider going through the freaking girl's skull, and all of a sudden they come back to life. 1 year later. You're thinking to yourself, what the fuck were they thinking with this movie? Because there's also some visuals that make you think that. And if you think that's crazy, how about his other movie before that, before or after that, I Married a Strange Person? Because you have, the plot of this is the main protagonist gets some kind of chip put in the back of his neck, and it gives him the powers to basically shape shift or metamorphosize anything to his will. So basically the girl he falls in love with becomes his girlfriend, his love interest, his wife, whatever. He gets to experiment with. How does he experiment with her? Well, in one of the scenes where they're making out, well basically they're making love in the bedroom, he basically turns her into different things. He turns her into a cheerleader, he turns her into a robot, he turns her into a freaking beaver. I mean, it's like, a rabbit I should say. He turns her into the Statue of Liberty. It's like, what the heck? And again, it's one of those WTF mindfuck situations where you're thinking, what was this guy on? And again, it goes back to the fact that it's more along the lines that this is something the guy had to get out of his system. He did. He had to get this out of his system when he did it. That's sometimes what these are all about. Getting it out of your system, even if it doesn't make much sense. You know, for me, if I had the artistic license and everything, I would hire a crew. I'd get in contact with a top female artist, singer, or up-and-coming female singer or whatever, and I would work with them on a song, to do a music video for a song of theirs, where I would say, we got to make this song because it sounds like it's perfect for it, almost scene-for-scene remake of Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer. Why? Because it's something I would want to get out of my system and make happen. And it's still something I want to see happen, and I keep viewing various animation groups and pages at Vimeo and on YouTube and the internet just to see if something's out there. And honestly, there's a lot of videos that you can tell, whether they admit it or not, the artists take inspiration from what they saw there. They do. From Peter Gabriel's video. They do. But anyway, that would be something I want to get out of my system if I had the luxury to do it. If I had the opportunity to do it. It's something I'd want to get out of my system. But I can't. And I'm still hoping someone's going to do it. I really do. But again, that's me, for example, wanting to get that out of my system. But if you think that's crazy, even in live action film, people do things, have done movies and stories that have basically, been, you know, those mindfuck-like movies, those WTF-like movies. And not just in the past decades either, but in the past few years. I'll give you an example. One that came out last year, I think it was last year. Yeah, 2014, I believe. Yeah, 2014. Lucy, with Scarlett Johansson of all people, Black Widow from Avengers, and Morgan Freeman starring in one of the biggest movies of the year, and if not visually entertaining films. In fact, that's what they say. Some people call it exciting and smart, heart-pounding, 100% entertaining. And why? Because of the fact that it's a visual spectacle. It obviously has a good plot. There's no doubt about that. You know, some critics have panned it. We're not going to say that it doesn't have its detractors, because it does. It's kind of a mixed bag, if you know what I mean. But the reason it's a mixed bag is basically because visually, to those that are kind of in the middle, some that are detracted from it, and some that are attracted to it, the reason it's, kind of like I said, it's got that mixed reaction all the way around, is because of its visual, it's mostly a visual spectacle of WTF mindfuckery. That's right, WTF mindfuckery. And the person that came up with the movie, the story idea, basically had to get it out of his system. He did. There's no doubt about it. It's the same thing with the person that approached Robin Wright, R. Foreman, and Walt Weiss Basher, or R. Foreman. It's a film by R. Foreman, I think so, yeah, written and directed by R. Foreman. This is something that obviously he had to get out of his system. He went to Robin Wright, asked her to portray herself in a movie that basically is a WTF mindfuckery right in the middle of it. I mean, the story and concept is good, but it's one of those movies that as you get towards the middle of it, and it goes from live action to psychedelic animation, almost out of which is almost like a mixture of the 30s, the 60s, and today, it makes you think, what the fuck were these people thinking, right? Because visually with the animation, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. The characters basically can turn their hands into wings so they can fly like birds. They grow plants out of their bodies sometimes. Heck, even the hands. Like there's a scene where Robin Wright in animation form is making out with one of the main animation protagonists, her love interest, I guess, in animation form. And basically, her hands are growing into like little tentacles, kind of digging into the ground and becoming like roots. And while they're becoming roots and they're growing and growing and growing, it's like she's turning herself into a freaking plant. Because you see flowers and stuff produced all over the place. And again, it's one of those WTF, what the fuck were they thinking, mindfuckery kind of deals. And again, I think it's basically because the guy, our Foreman, had to get it out of his system. He did. Even Japan, with their anime and all that, Japan has had a lot of anime, whether it's good anime, bad anime, mixed, whatever. Some of that anime has been WTF mindfuckery anime. Let's not deny it. Let's not deny it. Even some of the more mature anime, if you catch my drift, has been mindfuckery, if you know what I'm talking about. It has been. I'll give you an example from a almost semi-mainstream kind of situation. Revolutionary Girl Utena, which I have talked about. They did a motion picture version of the movie, an anime motion picture adaptation of the film, basically a retelling of the entire series. But the biggest difference that they added in, was the climax at the end. The climax at the end, where you had freaking Utena turn herself into a car. That's right. There's a freaking car wash that pops out of nowhere. She gets dragged into it. She gets turned into a freaking pink car that, oh, by the way, during the climax, gets covered by a red sheet and gets morphed into an even more slicker car. And that, oh, by the way, at the climax, gets crushed by these little tread tractors, and she's only able to survive after her and Anthe basically say this, the main line of something like revolutionize the world, and they burst right through the antagonist of the film all in one piece. And they're making out on what's left of the Utena car that Utena was. And it's like and it's a big WTF, because if you're a fan of the original Utena manga or the original Utena anime, and you see this adaptation and you see the ending of it, you too think, what the fuck? What kind of mindfuck is this? And then it only occurs to you if you read the commentary that the director was taking a page out of Sleeping Beauty, but in reverse. Because throughout the film, Utena was the prince, Anthe was the princess, and just like out of Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, the roles get reversed. Utena becomes the princess when she becomes a car, Anthony becomes the prince, and the way to wake her up is to drive her out of the academy area and into the real world. Again, it's one of those WTF moments. You think to yourself, why? What were they thinking? Why change something that didn't need to be changed? I mean, not saying it wasn't indicated that the characters could turn into other things. You know, there's an episode in the Uncut anime where one of the main, I guess you could say, one of the main anti-protagonists, if you will, sort of the tween-tagonist, if you will, basically turns herself into a cow, and then either her boyfriend or little brother does the same thing so she can take care of it. It's like, what? So, and again, it's one of those WTF deals. And again, it still continues to this day because there's a lot of regular anime, a lot of anime with all ages, teen, adolescent anime, young adult anime, very mature anime, where a lot of these kind of things happen. They do. And you're thinking to yourself, again, that same question that people ask for generations, WTF, what the fuck were they thinking when they came up with this mindfuck? Because that is the biggest question. But I know this video is going into several parts, and I do apologize, or this subject's going into several video parts, and I apologize for that. But there's another thing as well. You see, it's not just the writers of animation, anime series or movies, live action movies or series, or even comic books, because believe me, there have been several stories in Marvel Comics, DC Comics, Archie Comics, IDW, Image, Dreamwave, where this has happened as well. You want a good example, there's a story, I don't know when it takes place, in the whole situation with Ultron in the comics, where Ultron, I guess it's a female Ultron or whatever, possesses Tony Stark's Iron Man suit while he's still wearing it, basically possessing him, and by using the Ultron nanites, morphs him and the body into an exact replica of Wasp. That's right, Wasp is right there. So what does this female Ultron do when she takes control and manipulates Tony's body and armor and all that? She morphs it into a replica of Wasp. And if you read that issue, or even seen that situation, you think to yourself, or even seen that panel, you think to yourself, what the fuck were they thinking? What were they on at that time? What kind of mindfuckery is this? Because it makes you wonder, what the heck? But again, it's not just limited or unlimited to any of that, to movies or to live action movies or series, or animated anime, live action movies or series, or even comic books. Even us as fans have been guilty of it. That's right, even us as fans have been guilty of it, and because of a reason. Because of a reason, and the reason is because it intrigues us. What we see, it intrigues us because when we see these WTF mindfuckery moments, it intrigues us and even inspires us to come up with our own ideas. Because they're so out there. And because they're so out there, we become a fan of it because we are intrigued by it and we're inspired to create our own stuff. There's a friend of mine called Chaotic Lover 2 at fanfiction.net, DeviantArt, and even here on YouTube, that has come up with several stories that he has done chapters and chapters and chapters of, and sometimes hasn't even started on yet, because either he's busy with work like I am at times, or something, but he comes up with so many different ideas that not only does he make a story, like I said, that goes for several chapters, but it's a very but the stories he comes up with for the characters are really intriguing, interesting, and you sometimes when you read them, want to see them actually become an official comic book want to see them officially adapted either into comic book form or animation form. And what he does is he's a fan of characters getting elastic powers. Kind of like Elastigirl, Mrs. Incredible from The Incredibles. But he goes beyond just them being stretchy and elastic. He allows them to shape-shift and morph their shape into different things. And the characters he started this trend with, believe it or not, from what I got introduced by, was the freedom fighters of Sonic SatAM, mostly Princess Sally. And then he made that follow-up on giving those similar powers to Loop and Amy. And how did he do that? By having Loop and Amy accidentally fuse into one body. And then through that, he gave it to Fiona, who became good because of this. And I think even Nicole, who was possessing an animatronic version of Fiona or something. Or actually, it was Nicole possessing Fiona's body because they weren't sure if they could trust Fiona, but Fiona even got a similar powers, even in sort of a android-like form. But anyway, he has fun with this. He has fun. Not only does he tell a good story with these, but he allows the characters that get infected, that are in the situation like Sally is, to have fun with the powers. He allows them to manipulate and shape and morph their bodies into almost anything. Like there's a scene where she's training her body, basically there's several scenes where she's training on how to use her new elastic powers, how to manipulate her shape, morph her shape, whatever. And there's a scene where she's training with Sonic, and she comes up with the idea to morph her shape into basically a voluptuous, sexualized version, bigger buzz, longer hair, more attractive, kind of Jessica Rabbit-like. And in the story, it stops Sonic in his tracks. It's like, holy smokes, I didn't expect this, hubba hubba, kind of deal, you know what I'm saying? And it's not just that, he allows her to go to semi-liquidation. If she gets caught in a deal to where she's got to find a way to get out of it, she turns herself into a almost semi, if not total liquefied version of herself, goes through the cracks and then reforms. He even has allowed her, obviously taking inspiration from, let's say, Plastic Man, to manipulate herself to become clothes or even armor for her fellow friends, which she does for Luke. And it's pretty cool. It really is. And again, this gets passed on to Amy and Loop after they get fused and then separated, to Nicole through Fiona's body, and Fiona through an android-like body. It's kind of crazy. It really is. And then if that's not enough, you have Loop's kids or daughters. They get affected by it in that same story. And in the follow-up, where they crossed over with MLP, FIM, and then if that's not enough, he takes this similar concept, he takes it over to the Crypto Superdog franchise, does it to Brainy Barkey, the leader of the Dog Stars. He does that to her because he makes her become a love interest for not Crypto, but for Stretcho Much. And just like with Sally, he allows her to have fun with it, get more of a personality. And then if that's not enough, he does a crossover between Phoenix and Ferb and Road Rovers by having Candace and her two friends get turned into anamorphic wolf girls, and they become stretchy. And then he has something planned for Lola Bunny out of the Looney Tunes show, and it's like, holy smokes. And again, if you're new to this, if you're new to those stories like I was, you think to yourself, man, what was this? What the fuck was this guy thinking? What kind of mindfuck is this? But when you read the stories and you see how much hard work and dedication he put into it, you realize, okay, I get it. Yeah, this is a mind trip, a mindfuck that he took me on by doing this to these characters, but I see the hard work he has put into the stories to make them believable, make them be stories that you would want to see adapted into official comic book form or animation form. So sometimes when that happens, when these WTF mindfuckery moments happen, sometimes they're like, out of nowhere and they could be bad, like with that Star Trek deal. And sometimes they could be good because even though it's something you think makes you think, what were they thinking, what were they on and everything, what were they smoking, you realize it's not that bad because they have a good story that follows along with it. And again, I've had several friends that I've recommended here on YouTube at DeviantArt that do original stories sometimes that come out of not just my mind as commissioned or their minds because it's something they've been working on for a while. But when you read them, either it's a commission for myself or somebody else, or it's just their regular projects that they're working on, you think to yourself, if you're new to it, you think the same thing. What the fuck is going on here? What kind of mindfuck is this? But then when you read the story, you're like, oh, well, okay, I get it. It's a nice little story. You know, there's a story behind it. There's a reasoning behind it. There's character development. And sometimes there's just little funny one-shot deals. Like recently I had somebody I commissioned through Points at DeviantArt do a little short story of Sally creating an invisibility formula that also had the properties, also had the power to allow her, as it being invisible, to merge with inanimate objects. And even though it wasn't as long as I thought it would be, it was still good enough in its own one little shot deal that it had character development, because you had Sally, being kind of wondering, making sure her, always coming back and asking Nicole, okay, is this going to work? Is there an effect? Can you analyze this, that? Always still being Sally, but kind of growing a bit of character development by having fun with these powers and kind of being a little mischievy. So, again, like I said, we're just as guilty as the writers in Hollywood through the movies, television series, animated movies, live action movies, web series, whether it's animated web series, or live action web series or whatever. You know, we're just as guilty. We're just as guilty. But again, the reason we're just as guilty by creating these WTF mindfuckery moments is because we get intrigued by those that we've seen before. We get intrigued by those WTF, what the fuck mindfuckery moments that we've seen in cartoons, in cartoon movies, anime movies, cartoon series, anime series, live action movies, live action series. You know, even web series as well, like I said, even web comics. Because of the fact it's something we don't see every day. Even if it's a one-shot deal and it has nothing to do with the rest of the continuity. Or it's a one-shot, or it's just something that's a one-episode deal, but it does get reflected back on in the continuity. It's something that intrigues and inspires us, but again, it still keeps us asking years later, what the fuck were they thinking? What the fuck were they thinking when they came up with this? So, that is why we see these mindfuck-like moments. Because it does keep us asking, what the fuck were these people thinking? So, that's all I'm going to say on this, folks. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you know of any mindfuckery, what the fuck moments that you've seen that I haven't mentioned in anime, animation, live action or so, that I haven't mentioned, as well as what was the first WTF mindfuckery that you've seen in animation, live action, and so on. Let me know down below, comment if you like. Sorry that this topic was in several videos, and I'll talk to you all later.